Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to hop in here and kick off right at 1 o'clock Eastern. So just in a few minutes. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll kick off here in just a moment. Good afternoon. It is that time. I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon for the Partner Spotlight. We appreciate you taking the time to hop in here with us this afternoon. We've got a good one. I'm joined this afternoon with my friends from Rimo3 and Microsoft. And so we've got some really interesting information this afternoon and looking forward to sharing that with you. Real quick, just to get us started, I am Phil Sellers. I'm with XenTegra, and wanted to let you know about this promo, this giveaway that we've got. We've got a Work Has No Boundaries Ford Bronco giveaway, not just one, but 2 Ford Broncos that we're giving away here in the near future. For information about how you can get registered for this giveaway, go to workhasnoboundaries.com, and you'll find all of the information there on how to get qualified. Keep in mind, this is coming up pretty quick. I think the giveaway is in early May. So today's webinar, we're also giving away a $50 Amazon gift card. The winner is going to be notified after today's session. So just by being here, you're already in the running. So thank you again for joining. So to help us kick off, who is XenTegra? Who's hosting today? Well, XenTegra is a reseller. We started out as a boutique Citrix sort of reseller, and over the years, we've expanded way beyond that. We offer professional and managed services, and we're a little different than other resellers in that we focus on equipping our customers with total solutions. And total solutions include multiple different vendors, multiple products, all to help you attain the business outcome that you're looking for. A little bit more about us. We are a now international IT reseller. We've recently launched a practice in India. We have a practice in Canada, as well as our 10 years here in the United States. We do strategic consulting for companies. So we want to help you achieve your business outcomes with technology. And the way that we do that is pretty simple. We work to build a community through education opportunities, webinars, in-person events, and then we try to create solutions that serve that community. And that's kind of been our mission from the beginning. We're a little different than other resellers in that we're not going to market with any product you could get. We're going to market with solutions that we truly believe in, solutions that we've had past success with, and with partners where we work very closely so that we can make sure that you're successful. Some of those partners are listed here on the slide. One of the other great services that we do, we offer complimentary assessments. So if you've never worked with us before and you're interested to get to know us and see what we could help you with, one of these complimentary assessments is a great way to get to know us as a company. A little bit about myself. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I like to think of myself as a software-defined problem solver. You know, everything's software-defined or as a service these days. And so I've spent 25 years in the industry kind of helping other people solve those problems primarily as a customer. I've run IT teams for customers at 2 different large organizations, most recently as Director of Infrastructure Engineering for an insurance broker. And in addition to that, I'm a blogger, podcaster, and I just like to share what I know so that other people can learn from it and maybe maybe miss some of the potholes that I've fallen into, or find out how to solve their problem the way that I solved mine. Fun fact about me, I lived in the golf capital of the world, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, for 15 years, but I never learned to play. So don't ask me to go on the golf course. And today, as I mentioned, we've got partner Rimo3 for our Spotlight series. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Margaret at Rimo3, and she will kick off the rest of our webinar.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Philip. Appreciate it. All right. And as Josh gets the slide deck up, first off, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Again, as Philip said, my name is Margaret Heberling. I'm Director of Sales for Rimo3. Today, what I'd like to do is to kind of give you a very brief overview of who is Rimo3 and the problems we solve. And then I'm going to turn it over to Josh to explain how we solve those problems. The other thing that I do want to talk about is we do have a case study at the end that I want to share with you that I hope will be very relevant to maybe some of the things that you're thinking of or going through literally right now in these days and in times. So to get started, a little bit about who is Rimo3. We have founded in 2019. We're actually headquartered in London, and our executive team, as you can see up there, is very experienced. Our CEO and our CTO are the ones that created a product years ago called App DNA. And if we've got any Citrix customers on the phone, they may remember what that product is, because App DNA was sold in 2011 to Citrix. So very long and rich history in application testing. And then we also have our Chief Operating Officer is from FS Logics, which was recently back in 2019, sold to Microsoft. So a lot of industry knowledge and experience is what we bring to the table with Rimo3. As you can see, we have a very good partner base, including Microsoft and Citrix, as well as a number of others that we have a number of integrations within our software too as well. And then on the bottom, you'll see just a sampling of our customers. There are some from here in the States as well as overseas, as I just mentioned, that we are kind of globally, we're a global company. So what does Rimo3 do? As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a number of bullets. I'm not going to read them, but essentially I want to kind of give you 2 use cases that apply to these bullets, okay? The first one is we help companies when they're looking to migrate their applications from on-prem to the cloud, okay? So it's Azure Cloud, whether it's Citrix on Azure or whether it's Citrix moving to native AVD. So Rimo3 is an automated, intelligent application testing platform. And what we do is we run all your applications through the Rimo3 solution, and then we can actually tell you which applications can go into the Azure environment, whether it's Azure or AVD. And a couple other things we can tell you too, once we have them in the Rimo3 and point them to your Azure setup, is we can tell you, are they multi-session capable? Okay, which I know is a great savings when you're going from on-prem to cloud. The other thing we can tell you is, can your applications be modernized into the MSIX format, which is another key, piece coming forward. And then the third thing, and other things that we can tell you as well, but one of the third key things is we have a lot of customers and prospects that are looking to go from Windows 10 to a Windows 11. So the Windows 11 readiness projects. So we can also tell you that too is, can your applications automatically move to Windows 11 without having any manual effort, manual intervention in those? And we can tell you which applications can be done like that. The other key thing, which is really, really cool, is not all applications, when you go to the cloud, are going to work like they did on-prem. So if they don't work in the cloud, like you're used to having them work on-prem, then what we will actually also be able to tell you is exactly where the issue is. So you can look through the log file, or we also have kind of a video record and play, which Josh will show you both ways in the demonstration today. But that's a really key point, because when you're moving your apps from on-prem to the cloud and they don't work, this is really a huge accelerator to be able to understand, okay, what is my problem? Where is my problem? And then I can fix it so that it doesn't become a problem. I can resolve it and move on. So that is very, very key to a Rimo3 solution. So that's the first use case, on-prem to cloud migration. Okay. The second use case is, once you've got them in the cloud, you've got hundreds of applications in the cloud. What happens when you make changes to those applications? Think of Patch Tuesday. Think of your security updates that come, and they come ad hoc, right? They could come anytime during the year. So you've got to make changes to your applications. Well, the value of Rimo3 in this scenario is you've already got all your applications loaded up into the Rimo3 platform. Now what you do is, in a pre-production stage, you literally test all those changes that you're making to the applications, and you can make sure and confirm that it doesn't break the application. Once you've got that confirmation on all your applications, then you can push them out to your end users. So you're doing a little bit more work on the front end with all your applications, which quite frankly, in the Rimo3 world, is literally testing is a matter of minutes and days versus weeks and months. And you're helping alleviate a lot of support calls on the back end. Okay. So 2 use cases, on-prem to migrate to cloud. Second use case is ongoing change management. Okay. That's the key thing about Rimo3. So it's essentially, to summarize this slide, Rimo3 dramatically helps reduce the time, cost, and complexity by automating the discovery, testing, and packaging of your existing app estate. Think of Citrix, right? On-prem environment, and migrating it to either Azure on Citrix, Citrix on Azure, excuse me, or AVD native, and then continually testing changes that are made to the applications at scale. That's what Rimo3 does. Next slide. So this is just an example. I wanted to share with you some metrics that we capture when we onboard your applications into the Rimo3 environment. And Josh will kind of explain these in further in depth in the demo, but I wanted to give you a brief glance so that you can understand, what does Rimo3 capture? How do they do it? So essentially, this slide shows you that we onboarded, and by the way, this is a true story, okay? This is a real life example. We onboarded 1,080 apps. We literally started Thursday evening. We hit the Rimo3 button Thursday evening to onboard those applications into the Rimo3 environment. And when the folks came back Monday morning, all of those applications were inside the Rimo3. And the information that they were able to understand Monday morning was the dials at the bottom, okay? So they were able to understand how many of those 1080 apps could automatically go into AVD, and how many couldn't, and where are they? How many were ready for Windows 11? How many were able to be multi-session if they wanted to? And then how many could be transformed into MSIX? So we can give you all this information, again, in days, 3 days, right, over a weekend, versus if you were to upload manually those 1080 apps into the cloud and try to understand all this information at the bottom, it would take you, if not weeks, months, and a lot of resources to do this. So that's one of the key values, is the unattended automation of Rimo3. And again, this is something that Josh will elaborate on a little further down in the discussion, but I wanted just to give you a glance so you understood what does Rimo3 give me and how do I leverage it. Okay, next slide, please. So this is another real life example, a very recent customer that we helped, and we're still helping. So they are still a Citrix customer. They're moving off into AVD. And you can see the current state, that's where they are. They still have Citrix environments that they're moving. Couple of the key things that they came to us for is, we're really interested to understand what applications can we repackage or modernize into MSIX, because that's a key thing for them. They're going to be looking at Windows 11. They haven't done it yet, and these guys have at least 300 apps, if not more. So that's kind of the environment they were at when they came to Rimo3. Now, they came to us back in October, November of last year. So literally within 2 to 3 months, you'll see on the bottom box, if you will, the value that Rimo3 has provided already, okay? And that is, we were able to upload a number of applications, not all, we didn't do all 300. So far, we've done 75, onto the Rimo3 AVD environment. And they told us that this literally saved them at least 6 weeks in manual labor, obviously billable hours, okay? So this is coming from the customer. As I said earlier, we also have integrations with a number of our partners, Nerdio being one. So we also are leveraging the Nerdio integration for this customer as well. So that is a very real life scenario with a current customer. Next slide. So this is my last slide, but I wanted to put this out there because, and this is a couple of years old, but I think it's extremely still relevant. And for the folks that are on the call that are still on-prem and they're looking, they know they need to go to the cloud. They're just trying to figure out, how do I do this without getting in trouble, without going off the rails? So this is a great article that kind of gives you insight into some of the key things that you really need to look at and focus on before you embark on the cloud journey. And one of the key things that, and this is from Gartner, so this isn't a Rimo3, this wasn't even authored by Rimo3 or anywhere near it. So this tells you in the application space, one of the key things is you really need to understand, what do you have with your applications? Will they work in the cloud just like they work on-prem? A lot of times they don't do that. So when you begin your cloud journey and you do your assessments, you really ought to think of looking and doing an application assessment, which is where Rimo3 comes into the play, to be able to understand what are my applications in the cloud going to look like. And if I've got 200 or 300, and some of them don't work, then I know I can do phases. I can put these 25 applications, which I know will work because I've already tested them, into the cloud. I'm going to move those first. I'm going to move the second tranche. I'm going to have a third tranche. So you can really do a really well thought out plan and make sure that when you upload your applications into the cloud, that they actually are going to test and your end users are not going to have any downtime or dissatisfaction with the application. I think that's the last slide from me. Are there any questions on kind of who is Rimo3? What are we all about? Nope. Okay. So actually, I do have a couple. I want to bring Rob into the picture here. Before Josh starts going, I kind of want to get a better understanding of the audience and And kind of Rob is with Microsoft, and I'm sure you all know him. He's been doing this stuff for a long time. So Rob, I kind of wanted to ask you just a couple really quite good questions that, can hopefully frame up the value of, leveraging cloud type scenarios and cloud type solutions. So, what in your experience, right? What is the landscape, for cloud VDI looking like right now? I mean, what are the drivers that you're seeing?
Yeah, we see, I think some of the same things that we see just, maybe in cloud adoption, not just cloud VDI, some of it's being able to have those burstable demand type workloads. And that doesn't change from a VDI perspective, right? I think we saw during COVID, I hate to even say the word, but that I think that as Citrix and desktop admins have been saying for years, hey, we as a company have to prepare for pandemics, the Asian bird flu, the snow apocalypses and all that. And certainly, when COVID was no different, it just was much more massive. So being able to simplify the delivery and deliver to users everywhere, anytime. And I think that burst use case is a lot of times the first thing that we see some of those customers going down that journey, right? Leveraging, maybe it's an HA desktop. Hey, if something goes awry here, we can still get to a desktop. So I think those are some of the things that we see time and again.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So in your exploration and working with companies and customers, are you seeing like a more persistent or a more pooled model?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we see many people, especially in the financial sector, where they're really focused on persistent desktops today. And to some degree, persistent desktops in an on-prem environment are pretty easy. Let the profile live there, let all the apps live there, let System Center deliver the apps into it. You kind of forget about it, right? You package them once and they're in the image, and I do a lot of testing up on the front end for the image, but then after that, you're basically good to go. But what we see as you come into a cloud model, that model doesn't really work as well. So if you can leverage pooled models where you can shut off those VMs, and that really kind of drives the use case for being able to attach applications to sessions kind of out of band and out of that image. And I think that's an integral part why customers need products like Rimo3 to go in, look at the applications, see if they not only test them, which we would do whether we're doing them in a full image or whether we're doing them as a published app or as an attached disk app. We still not only smoke test, but now we need to transform them into MSIX packages and get them ready for app attach or app layering, whatever the case might be. So I think we're seeing mostly people transitioning from persistent to pooled and kind of pushing back on their community base to say, prove to me why you need a persistent image.
Good, interesting. So you mentioned MSIX app attach, which is something that we actually can help companies understand whether their applications can be modernized. Tell me, what's the look at multi-session? Are a lot of companies leveraging that, interested in that, or is that something still on the roadmap for companies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what we see, especially like in an on-prem environment, we see folks are leveraging a XenApp server-based, delivery, which is kind of the best from an economics of scale. Same is true, I think, as you transition to Azure. Yet in an on-prem environment, one of the kind of parts of the project that were always a little bit frustrating is you had to have that RDS cal. Right? You had to have that VDA cal if you're doing persistent VDA or VDI. So what we see is most customers are leveraging multi-session, first of all, for the density, right? I can put more users on one OS, which of course reduces compute, which is the most expensive cost in any cloud provider. But secondly, it's the ability to eliminate that session host license. So we see probably 90% of the customers or more are leveraging the Win10 or Win11 multi-session OS. And I think mainly because Citrix and native and VMware opportunities have the ability to leverage that multi-session OS and eliminate that that cost for the session host count.
Exactly. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for that. I know you've got real world experience recently, especially with the Citrix environment, folks. So I just wanted to kind of get a better understanding of that. So Josh, let me turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Margaret. And thanks, Rob. That's fantastic insight from your side of the fence. Before we get into the actual product demonstration, what I would like to do first is, as Margaret had mentioned, Rimo3 is a software platform. At its core, you boil it down to its core competencies. It's a very robust automation and orchestration engine. So what I'd like to do here is just really whiteboard out the entire automated workflow, because there's a lot that happens underneath the hood or behind the scenes. I think it's important to visualize out within here. So, you know, again, we're really automating and orchestrating two critical functions as it relates to your application life cycles. Automated unattended intelligent testing of those applications, and then the modernization by ways of packaging those applications in a modern format. So the starting place for Rimo3 is around the applications, that legacy application repository. Now, Rimo3 itself offers out-of-the-box integrations to legacy management planes, such as Microsoft's SCCM. This is 100% optional and really for the purpose to streamline the importing of all of these applications. But again, to boil it down further, Rimo3's focus is on the application packages themselves and how they sit currently today. MSI format, AppV format, PowerShell deploy toolkits. It really doesn't matter from a Rimo3's perspective, as long as that application can be installed unattended. Reason being is that the entire Rimo3 automation pipeline is unattended, and the installation is an important validation check. So what we then do is we import those application packages in batch and at scale directly into the Rimo3 platform. Rimo3 itself lives in Azure, but specifically it lives in our customers and partners Azure tenants to provide what we define as contextual relevance, meaning that because it's operating underneath their environment, it meets security policies, compliance, as well as gives ultimate control around configuration, because outside of importing the applications, we also allow the importation of customized operating builds as well. So this provides the opportunity to make that test environment as specific and as detailed as possible. So for example, having the test environment automatically connect to the domain, so we can enforce GPO rules, etc., during the testing. Right? Security posture, baseline applications, any type of networking that may exist in the environment, all of the good stuff that applications need to either install or run, Rimo3 wants to take it all into consideration in turn to improve the robustness of the results at the end. So outside of importing the applications, we're importing the custom operating systems, and then we start to analyze the applications. And as it relates to the operating systems, we really want to understand two critical pieces of information. What's the known current working environment look like today? And of course, where you want to move to in the future. So for example purposes today, if I'm running, to Rob's point, if I'm running a server environment on-prem VDI deployment, that current environment could be a server-based operating system where traditionally multi-session was only available. Now, what Rimo3 does in an unattended process is it runs a baseline intelligence smoke test against all of the applications. The purpose of the baseline test at this point in the automation pipeline is to not determine application compatibility, because we already know this. This is the known working current environment. Why we're performing this baseline analysis is to train Rimo3 of what a successful outcome looks like by ways of installation and smoke testing. Therefore, it's able to build a profile dynamically from each and every application, and it knows exactly what that successful outcome looks like. And once we've accomplished that baseline set of data, we've now positioned ourselves to look at any desired state moving forward. So in our case today, we'll use Azure Virtual Desktop, replacing that heavy server-based operating system with a modern Windows 10 or Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session sitting in AVD. Again, the desired state by definitions of Rimo3 is really just a change to the baseline state. So it does not need to be applied only to major upgrades or major migrations. This is in that second use case, or ties back to that second use case Margaret was talking about, where it could be something of a patch or a feature release, or really any change that's deemed important to that operating environment. The point being is that Rimo3 understands how that application is going to interact. Therefore, we rerun that analysis on the desired state to determine if there's been any impact for that. And at this point, it's pretty simple. It either passes, meaning a successful result, or a failure result. In the event that something should change and causes failure, Rimo3 will provide that error analysis to the forefront by the ways of a console view log levels, or, as Margaret had mentioned, recording the entire automation sequence for on-demand playback so you can see visually what's happening. And our intent is to bring that error information to the forefront very quickly as a result of the automation, so that then our customers can take that information and make data-driven informed decisions on what next to do with that application. Whether that be it's possible to remediate, looking for an upgraded version, retire the application, etc. Based off of that information, we can then feed that application directly back through the automation pipeline at an attempt to achieve a successful result. Now, after we've understood, we're effectively at a fork in the road in the automation pipeline, because we've taken all of the legacy applications, we've analyzed those against our unique operating environments, both current and desired state. And now we're accurately able to determine, based out of this portfolio, what applications I can now deploy as is. So in our example today of moving from that on-prem server environment to a modern AVD environment, I can clearly have a roadmap of what applications I can accelerate and deploy as is, as they sit in their current or legacy format. However, what I also have an opportunity now to do is analyze and determine what applications can potentially be modernized. And what Rimo3 supports today out of the box is the ability to determine MSIX suitability, as well as VMware App Volumes suitability. Lastly, the ability to determine Windows 32 line of business by ways of Intune wrapping suitability as well. And the only way for Rimo3 to accurately determine if these legacy applications are suitable candidates for these modern formats is we're attempting to convert those in the automation pipeline underneath the hood of our platform. And we're using Microsoft's MSIX packaging tool baked in. We've worked very closely with the development team to ensure we're following best practices, and likewise with VMware as well. We're using their app capture technology directly underneath our platform. And very similar to the analysis, after that attempt of conversion, regardless of what the required format is, it's either going to pass or fail. Now, in the event of failure, the same rules apply. We'll present that failure information to the forefront, so again, you can make informed decisions on why it failed and if there's a remediation path forward. Now, if it does successfully modernize, what Rimo3 then does is it runs a post-validation analysis against that newly created package, because it's one thing to understand if I can virtualize or containerize a legacy application. It's another thing to understand is once it takes on that new format, will it perform and function as expected? So out of the same automation pipeline, Rimo3 is able to validate that. Then, as a result of a successful post-validation after the modernization activities have occurred, we then allow you to retrieve these production-ready packages directly from the Rimo3 technology itself. Very similar to the optional SCCM integration, we offer out-of-the-box optional export integrations to modern management planes, specifically Nerdio to automate those MSIX packages going into MSIX app attach. So we hand the package, the validated package to Nerdio. Nerdio will expand that to VHD, mount that VHD to a host pool, and remove what was previously a manual process for those administrators to get the application fully deployed to app attach. As I mentioned as well, export to Intune, whether that's MSIX or Intune Win wrapping. Again, the platform is flexible based off your requirements. And then lastly, the ability just to retrieve those manually or leveraging Rimo3's extensive API capabilities that will allow you to automate that application into the next phase of the life cycle.
And Josh, I think kind of recalling mentally that slide that Margaret showed from Gartner about where cloud projects go off the rail. This is one where cloud VDI projects don't go off the rails, but they stall, right? Is that, hey, great, we've got an image out there. Great, we're testing. Yeah, everything works. Now we need to be able to use it. And to use it, we have to put our apps in it. And it's usually in POCs, that's 2 or 3 apps, 4 or 5 apps. What you've just said is that I can have all my apps in a bucket or go grab them from whatever repository I am, test them, and if they pass, go ahead and put them in app attach, right? Or go ahead and put them in app volumes so that I'm ready to go. That, I mean, for us and what we've seen in cloud deployments, not so much from the pilot, but as they go to production, that's where it stalls for the longest time. So that's a huge value, it seems to me.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. All of the other moving parts make sense, right? The financial drivers being able to consolidate in, Windows 10, 11, multi-session, etc., right? The burstability, the optimization that the cloud brings. What I find the most is where do you begin with the applications, right? How do you prevent from that analysis paralysis? I have so many apps, I have no idea what they're doing, what they are. Again, this is a way in batch and at scale to kickstart at the assessment level and then complement on that ongoing change management level as well. We like to call it migration to maintenance, right? So you need an entry point to kickstart the migration by ways of the applications, some tooling in there to help and automate the migration. But then how do you maintain that once you're there? You've hit a milestone. How do you keep the lights on in that environment? Because we know the Microsoft operating system is going to change. Applications are going to change, right? So this more or less provides an out-of-the-box application lifecycle management process by ways of dynamically analyzing them in a fraction of the time you can do it manually.
Nice.
Great. Any other questions? And if there are any in the chat, I can't see the chat since I'm sharing my screen, so I'll pause here.
We do have one. So one of the questions is, the question right now is, do you require a network to operate?
So we do. We require a virtual network that's existing in Azure. So again, I mentioned we do deploy in our in a designated Azure tenant. I'll use the customer reference. It would be our customer's Azure tenant. We do have flexible options where we can attach to existing resource groups and VNets and subnets because those have security and compliance rules around them, or we can create a net new in an environment as well. Good question. Hopefully that answered it.
Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the actual product here, and hopefully that that automated pipeline illustration was helpful because, well, as I mentioned, once we get into the technology here, a lot of the magic, if you will, happens behind the scenes. And as I mentioned, we start with the applications themselves. So the ability to import those application packages. Now, the screen we're looking at here is that entry point. It's that starting place. It's defined as the onboarding workspace within Rimo3, but this is showing us here the results after I've imported my applications. What it's also identifying is the operating systems that I'm using for the analysis. And again, I mentioned I'm in the demonstration use case today. I'm going to move from a traditional server-based deployment to a more modern Windows 11 enterprise deployment sitting in AVD. Now, after the importing of the applications, that's really the heavy lift, if you will, is connecting to SCCM or dragging and dropping all of the apps into the Rimo3 system. Then the automated pipeline, the unattended analysis happens. And the first thing that Rimo3 is effectively doing is it's performing a Rimo3 discovery process on each and every application when it imports. Now, what that discovery process entails, and we're looking at the results of this, is it's effectively extracting as much data as it can from that application so that it can start to build that profile of exactly how that application is intended to interact with the operating system. So some examples of that data that we store in the profile is the application metadata, helps with versioning. More importantly, it helps with that installation logic. As I mentioned, the installation or deployment is a key validation check in the overall application lifecycle. So it captures all of the metadata, but then what we start to do is dynamically and intelligently start to uncover the core bits and bytes of the app. And we need a starting place. So we start at the parent process level by ways of the core executables. Then what we do is we start to then identify shortcuts that are included in that package to launch those executables. And the reason why we do it this way and the methodology is this way is because we're not making any assumptions of the application. You're not inputting any information outside of the installation logic or the application package into Rimo3. Therefore, this is part of the value is Rimo3 is dynamically uncovering what it needs to extract from that application and therefore what it needs to test from that application. So in this example, we can see a very typical Adobe application. You know, it's uncovered a lot of executables in parent processes, but it's only uncovered a couple shortcuts. So what Rimo3 will then do is now create an entry point for that dynamic intelligent smoke test because it knows where to start and what to launch. What it also will do is start to uncover any services that's installing and then report back on the expected status of those services. Now, how the testing component will actually work and what we're building for that test case is here. We have a starting point. So the technology will go in after successful installation and it will start to launch these shortcuts, in turn launching these executables. Now, what's happening behind the scenes is Rimo3 is capturing all of the communication and response codes that are being generated based off of what these executables are doing. It could be one of thousands of things. It'll store those. What it will also do then is follow the executables down, should it be launching any child processes, and then make intelligent decisions at an attempt to extend that intelligent smoke test as far as we possibly can to collect as much data as we possibly can for that particular application.
Then once Josh, where you mentioned bits and bytes, it made me think of this. As you're going through all the particulars of a specific application, for us, when you've installed and you've got your base image, you're putting these into the image, and let's say you then decide or find out that the app is not compatible. What a pain in the butt to then have to go back in and rip out all the things, because we know not every app installs and uninstalls correctly by itself. So the fact that you're putting this into a separate VM where everything's isolated and capturing, that's a huge benefit in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's the iterative approach as well. So this discovery phase is more, you know, in my opinion, the most vital for the entire automation pipeline to be successful, because this discovery phase is what, again, unattended, dynamically based off no assumptions of the application, is determining that application's DNA and that application's profile. Therefore, once that has been collected, it can now automatically progress. And to your point, that's where we then baseline that against that known working operating system, right? So if we've missed something in the image, if we're doing a mismatch, there's dependencies, we'll call it out here before it gets any further down the line in your migration lifecycle plan. So you can catch these quickly. And again, it could either be on the application end or on the image end, but we'll call these out. And that's exactly what this kind of onboarding workspace has designed to do, is effectively provide a a level 0.5 rationalization of what you're importing into Rimo3. Great point.
Very cool.
So after I've completed the onboarding, and you'll see here, I can, sift through, it categorizes, identifies areas that I can draw myself attention to. But what I'm effectively determining at this point is, I have 59 applications that have been successfully onboarded into Rimo3. What that means is they're suitable candidates for Rimo3's automation. So now, based off of what my requirements are, I have that choice. I can now go and modernize those applications, or I can now determine the suitability of those applications running in that desired state environment. And for today's use case, I'm going to use Azure Virtual Desktop for that. And again, as mentioned, Windows 11 specifically running on that. And to drill down a little further out of the box AVD support that Rimo3 is providing, we break it down into 3 fundamental pillars. AVD as is, which the definition of that is we're taking that application as it sits today in its current format, and we're testing it against an Azure Virtual Desktop image based off of what that looks like in a persistent context. So even though it may be a multi-session image, we're still only doing a single session test. And what we're trying to determine here is that iterative type approach. So at a bare minimum, I can take this Billing Center ActiveX plugin and I can deploy that to my new AVD environment. Now, what I've done is drilled into the automation sequence just to provide some additional visibility into that automation. And what you'll see here is everything that it's doing in that unattended process. So the first thing that it's going to do is on demand provision that virtual environment. It's going to install the application based off of the logic that it's learned. And then it's going to dynamically test that application based off of what we've discovered in that previous state. Now, what determines a success or failure? If you recalled, we've already captured what that successful outcome looks like on that known working environment. Therefore, we have a benchmark or a baseline to compare this against to. So we know exactly what's going to happen. And as you can see here, we have this log level kind of technical detail. But again, we're also recording it and then grabbing static screenshots when events happen during that test process as well. After the testing has been completed, we're going to uninstall the application and then on demand deprovision that virtual environment. Now, what we're also doing, because we have full control over that virtual environment, is we're capturing performance metrics in isolation under our Rimo3 test, meaning we're only looking at what we're doing as it relates to the application. And why we're doing this is because we want to be able to determine performance impact. So not to size or get recommendations, but again, it goes back to that baseline and that profile of the successful outcome. Because we've done this on the known working environment, we then do it on the desired environment and compare to determine if, in this case here, what app am I on, this ActiveX plugin? If I were to take this from that server environment running in AppV format, I were to now move this to AVD run on Windows 11 Enterprise, is there going to be an impact, right? Is there going to be an impact to the installation? Is there going to be an impact to the smoke test? And then, of course, is there going to be an impact to the performance? If so, where? CPU, network utilization, etc. And then call that out as well. So when there are impacts, let us provide visibility to that. We always gravitate towards the negative aspect of performance. However, it is potential that there could be, or it is possible that there could be potential positive performance impacts as well. And the performance is interesting because, again, it's not meant for profiling or sizing. There's a lot of great solutions out there. It's meant to determine that impact at an individual app level, but also at the ability to scale up into the entire application estate to determine if there are any trends for a mass migration or a large migration of applications to be moved from one environment to the other. The next fundamental pillar is the multi-session capabilities that are, as we all know, now available in Windows 10 and 11 Enterprise. And the nice part about the patented IP that Rimo3 has in its software is there's no administration or scripting or updating that needs to happen to that intelligent smoke test that we provide. In fact, what's happening is we're just generating or spawning out multiple concurrent sessions against this multi-session image to determine, okay, I know what it looks like in a single persistent mode. Now, what happens if I run this in a multi-session mode? And a lot of the times it's somewhat trivial what we're finding, but something as simple as writing to a user directory so that when user 1 comes in, launches that application, again, we know what that expected profile should be. It's going to launch this screen. We're going to click these buttons in the dialog box. However, when user 2 comes in, something's locked or that expected outcome is not happening. We're going to catch that and draw the attention to, and then again, provide all of that information possible so that our customers can make informed decisions on potential remediation or configuration so that they can get these applications working in a true multi-session context. The last area here then is the application modernization. Specifically for Azure Virtual Desktop, it boils down to MSIX suitability. And I'm just going to transition over to a more focused MSIX dashboard. But what you'll see here is all of the different results of the conversion. As I mentioned, it either passes or it fails. If it fails, we can drill in, find out exactly where in that conversion process, what errors that it's generating and why it's failing. This particular application is a plugin, simply just not a suitable candidate for an MSIX package itself. So it gets halted right at that conversion state. However, it is possible that an application does get converted, but then does not function or perform as expected. That's all goes back and not to, beat it down too much, but it all goes back to that capturing of the expected outcome. We know what that should look like. For example, here, if I look at this application, it has been converted, no problem. It successfully modernizes into MSIX. However, when we go and attempt to test that application post-conversion, we can find that once we get into the bits and bytes, this particular application is missing some sort of library or DLL that wasn't included within the package. Therefore, that executable is not giving us that successful result. And we're drawing, the attention right there to make informed decisions. Well, do I need to put a runtime on the image? Can I package that runtime into the same container? Again, it's the wonderful world of applications and the many different complexities that they all have. But then lastly, as we've achieved success, meaning we were able to containerize as well as perform the post modernization intelligent smoke test. And if you recall, we've already validated that these can run on our AVD image. They can run in a multi-session context. We've now accurately determined that these are great candidates for Microsoft's MSIX app attach, right? So where Rimo3 stops is that validated production ready MSIX package. And this is where the out-of-the-box export utilities come in handy, where we can then automate that next phase in the life cycle further. Go ahead, pause there for a moment again and open it up if there's any questions or comments.
I don't think we see any questions just now, but I tell you, when you think about admins of VDI environments, we're not the experts in the applications. We don't know each individual application. So I think, the smoke testing and prepping it for the next use case is all very important. And let me ask you, are you able to produce a report when things are not suitable? So either in the dashboard, I think where we saw it, or can you print that in some sort of a format?
You can. Great question. So I myself always recommend the dashboards because they're subject to change every day with projects, right? It's living, breathing data. You can sort, you can filter, etc. But all of this data can be exported 2 ways. So one, very simply, the raw data can be pulled out via Excel to be massaged further. Or that's a very common use case for the extensible API, where we can populate a Power BI or a Tableau with all of that data as well, should there be other enterprise reporting strategies or tools in place.
That's excellent. Yeah. I think a lot of times it goes out to user acceptance testing, and this just kind of, really at the very least shortens that the runway for that and maybe eliminates it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the last area here is really in that maintenance category that we spoke of. That was use case number 2 that Margaret had introed. So now if we do a quick recap, right, we've understood, we've imported as many applications as we possibly could. We've stored profiles for those in the Rimo3 system. We've done the assessment. We've helped with the migration by actually creating the packages, exporting the packages. But now what? And this comes to that maintenance aspect, the ongoing change management. Because what we do know is we do know that the applications will change, either updates to existing applications or net new applications being introduced into the portfolio. And we certainly know, and probably the more common, is the change on the operating system level as well, right? Here, I've done all my efforts and analysis against 21H2. By the time I hit a milestone and get enough users and workloads over, is it time to start to evaluate, 22H1? What's the next version of Windows? Did we swap out our antivirus client? Are there GPOs issues? Again, any change as it relates to the application or the operating environment, because you've now invested that initial effort by importing and onboarding the applications, having them very agile under Rimo3 management, now the effort and the time to value of the results to analyze for the next change is even reduced further. Certainly, the first time around, we accomplished it in a fraction of the time that you could manually do that, but now it's even further. And here's why: one is you'll see that now my application portfolio, and I'm in my management workspace, I have 100% pass. That's by design, because I was able to remediate and remove all of the applications that I couldn't get to my desired environment. Excuse me. Excuse me, now I can use this as that ongoing change management plane, meaning that including the MSIXs that I've converted, I've introduced into my environment, they're now all under management. So use case number 1, should the applications change, we have an update to, Adobe, or we have an update to 7-Zip, we need to, reanalyze that. We just go back to square one, we import that application, so it's now under management like all of the other ones. Nothing changes there. Now, when there's a change on the operating system, we've positioned ourselves, due to that initial investment, to now be a couple clicks of the mouse away to point Rimo3 towards what that new desired environment looks like, or what that change looks like, technically speaking. And that change can come in all different shapes and forms. So if I wanted to go, move to a direct nether operating system, I can do that, whether that's a vanilla operating system that I just want to do an initial assessment on based off the marketplace, or I have configured that new environment with the change. I go ahead, I select that, basically pointing Rimo3 to that, and I rinse and repeat the automation. And we're able to do this with compute instead of that manual effort, which was traditionally required. So I'm gonna stop there. I know that we're coming up on time, but go ahead and open it up for any comments or questions that that may be out there. Questions? Great. We'll go ahead and stop the screen sharing there and pass it back over to you, Philip.
All right. Well, Josh, Margaret, Rob, thank you so much. I think we can easily see how this accelerates outcomes for businesses. I mean, it's a huge time savings, and it gives us a toolkit for helping to streamline operations in the future. If we don't have any other questions, I will just recap and say thank you for everybody for spending your time with us this afternoon, getting to know Rimo3, what they bring to the table. We really appreciate your time. And some lucky attendee today is going to get this $50 Amazon gift card. We're going to be drawing that after the webinar is complete today, and you'll be notified by email. One more quick reminder, we've got our Work Has No Boundaries giveaway coming up in May, giving away 2 Broncos. So thank you to Rimo3 and our other sponsors who are working with us on this program, but we truly believe that you can work from anywhere and be empowered and get the outcomes that you're looking for. So This giveaway is the embodiment of that. We gave away 1 Bronco last year, giving away 2 this year. And last of all, thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time. Hopefully, everything you've learned today, you'll be able to follow up on. If you need anything, please reach out to your client executive at XenTegra. We'll get you in touch with the folks at Rimo3, or reach out directly to the Rimo3 folks. And I'm sure they'll be glad to help as well. But we appreciate your time, and have a great afternoon and evening.
Yep, and let me just interject one thing. Thanks, Philip. So again, from the Rimo side, thank you all for attending, and hopefully we were able to share some valuable information that you can leverage in your organization. I will say that we do offer no cost proof of concepts or proof of values. So we would be happy to discuss if you are interested in migrating to the cloud or doing the ongoing change management of your applications. We would love the opportunity to discuss that in further detail and see if a proof of value or proof of concept, excuse me, would work for you.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Margaret. And yeah, let us know how we can help. We are all on the line to help you succeed. Have a great day, everyone.
So.